Today I'm taking some additional steps to hide that joint where White Mountain sits on top of permanent scenery. Stick around because that's happening right now. Hi, I'm Roy Smith. We model railroaders face a problem when creating removable scenery on top of permanent scenery. And that problem is we may be left with a joint or crack between the two. That's what's happened in case of White Mountain on my layout. You have seen me make White Mountain removable from the layout in previous videos. You'll recall that I did this so that I can access the helix under White Mountain more easily in order to fix catastrophic derailments that can occur in the helix and to clean the inside of the helix. I wanted the helix to be accessible from under the benchwork, from in front of the fascia, and now from above by making White Mountain removable. But making White Mountain removable left me with an unsightly and unrealistic joint in the scenery. Here's what it looks like. I'm going to try to eliminate or at least reduce this joint line. First, I'm going to carve fracture lines in the scenery above and below the joint so that the joint appears to be just another fracture line. Then I will apply diluted pigments on both sides of the joint to further disguise it. Finally, I will begin to apply ground covers. I also plan to add vegetation to help conceal the joint, but I haven't begun to do this yet because I ordered some talus to use along the base of White Mountain at the joint. This talus hasn't arrived in the mail yet. I'm reluctant to put down a lot of ground covers and vegetation until the talus does arrive and I have a chance to apply it. As I go along, you will see me putting these scenery materials down in an irregular pattern on both sides of the joint to help conceal or camouflage the presence of the joint. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm carving those fracture lines above and below the joint. I should have done this 2 weeks ago when I used shaper sheet and spackling paste in an attempt to conceal the joint, because now the spackling paste is as hard as concrete, but it never occurred to me at that time. In fact, one of you suggested putting these fracture lines in the scenery above and below the joint to make the joint look just like another fracture line. I've gone back through all of the comments to find out who recommended this, but no luck. I couldn't find it. If it was you, please step forward and be recognized, because it's a fabulous idea. Now I'm cleaning up the debris from carving fracture lines. I'll carve the rest of the fracture lines off camera. Next, I'm painting the fracture lines, starting with a black wash to emphasize the existence of the fractures. As it soaks in, the black seems to become gray. I will be applying washes of other colors in this area to blend the black color into the fractures, just as I have done elsewhere on the mountain, especially white. Again, it looks a little unrealistic now, but hopefully that will change as I continue to apply other colors. Still too dark. I am applying a generous wash of white pigment to lighten it up. Along with the white, I've also done some touch-up with burnt umber and ochre yellow, and this is what it looks like right now. At this point, I'm going to stop painting because I want to start putting down some ground covers. I can always come back and apply more pigments later on. Okay, here are some of the ground covers I'm going to use right now. They include Scenic Express Real Dirt, Scenic Express Desert Dust, Woodland Scenics Buff Colored Ballast, including coarse, medium, and fine ballast. And finally, Woodland Scenics Fine Yellow Grass. I have other scenery materials that I will use later on, but what I'm about to do right now is just an experiment, an initial test of these materials at White Mountain. Besides, as I said, I'm waiting for the talus to arrive before I can get really serious about using more ground covers and vegetation. If White Mountain looks different in the next couple of clips, it's because I'm shining more light on it right now. It's like terrain in the real world. The colors change depending on changes in natural light throughout the day and throughout the year. So I begin by putting down a 50-50 mix of white glue and water. I'm very careful about doing this because I don't want ground covers everywhere, and I certainly don't want to re-glue the removable part of the mountain to the permanent scenery below it. Then I sift on the real dirt. Next, I apply more glue and desert dust this time. It may be a little difficult for you to see these ground covers right now. Later on, I will zoom in. Next comes the coarse ballast. Ballast isn't just for putting along the tracks anymore. It also makes great scenery material elsewhere on the layout. Next, medium ballast. You may recall that I used ballast along Echo Creek to give the impression of boulders and rocks along the edge of the creek. Now the fine ballast. By the way, I do ballast my Cato Unitrack, but I use fine gray ballast for that to match the prototype. And last, for now, I apply a small amount of yellow grass, but only a small amount because there isn't much grass growing on White Mountain on the prototype. All right, the glue has dried, so let's vacuum up any loose materials. Now we'll zoom in so you can see the scenery materials a little better. Remember, I'm just experimenting at this point. I will be adding more of these materials along with other materials later on. In addition, I will apply some washes to these materials so that their color matches the rest of the terrain. Well, there you have it. I certainly will continue with this project after the talus arrives. That's when I can apply more ground covers and vegetation. As always, I want to thank you for coming along on this layout update today. If you're new here and haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to go ahead and do so. And be sure to hit that little bell icon so that you get notified of new uploads. I wouldn't want you to miss any of them. Remember, I try to upload 2 videos each week, Dispatch on Tuesday nights in which I get to interact with you, and a layout update on Saturday mornings in which I share the progress I am making on my layout with you. Right now, you're watching this week's layout update. I hope you will join me for both of these episodes each week. So, until next time, happy railroading. I'm Roy Smith, and I will see you again very soon.